Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance watching the stars drift past his ship. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. The message that came through their long-range communication still echoed in his mind like a bad dream that refused to fade away. The Galactic Council wanted to meet with humanity. After 50 years of human expansion across dozens of star systems, they finally decided Earth was worth their attention. Jake had heard stories about the Council his whole life, but never thought he would be the one chosen to represent his species at their first official meeting. Dr. Lisa Adams walked onto the bridge carrying a thick folder of research papers. She looked tired, but her eyes held the same excitement Jake had seen when she discovered her first alien artifact 20 years ago. Lisa was the best xenobiologist Earth had ever produced, and she knew more about alien cultures than anyone else in human space. "The files from intelligence just came through," Lisa said as she handed Jake the folder. 12 different alien species make up the Council, and they have been running things in this part of the galaxy for over 3,000 years. Jake opened the folder and looked at the pictures of the alien representatives. The Vorthok looked like giant insects with 4 arms and compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once. The Eldari were made of living crystal that changed colors based on their emotions. The Nexari reminded him of Earth dolphins, but with 6 tentacles instead of fins. "Any idea what they want from us?" Jake asked as he flipped through more pictures. Lisa shook her head. The message was very formal and polite, but it did not give us much information. They said humanity has become a significant presence in this region, and they wish to discuss our future relationship with the galactic community. Admiral Peter Kane entered the bridge at that moment. His uniform was perfectly pressed and his gray hair was cut short in military fashion. Peter had fought in the colony wars 30 years. Ego and his experience in combat made him the perfect choice to accompany their diplomatic mission. "Morrison, the jump coordinates have been loaded into navigation," Peter said. "We should reach Centress Prime in 18 hours. Centress Prime was a neutral world that sat exactly between the territories of 4 different Council species. The massive space station that orbited the planet served as the Council headquarters and had never been visited by humans before. Ambassador Carol Wright joined them on the bridge a few minutes later. She wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps and carried herself with the confidence that came from 20 years of negotiating trade deals and peace treaties. Carol had spent months preparing for this meeting, and she knew the formal protocols of every Council species. "I have been reviewing the cultural guidelines one more time," Carol said. "The Vorthok consider direct eye contact to be a challenge to their authority. The Eldari communicate through color changes as much as words. The Nexari will try to read our emotional states through chemical signals in the air." Jake nodded and closed the folder. "Sounds like this meeting will be interesting." The next 18 hours passed slowly as the Defiance traveled through hyperspace toward their destination. Jake spent most of his time reviewing Earth's expansion history and trying to understand why the Council had waited so long to contact them. Humans had been colonizing worlds for 50 years and trading with minor alien species for 20 years, but the Council had never shown any interest until now. When they dropped out of hyperspace near Centress Prime, Jake could not hide his amazement. The space station was enormous, with hundreds of docking bays and massive towers that stretched for kilometers in every direction. Ships from dozens of different species moved in, carefully controlled patterns around the station while automated traffic control systems guided them to their assigned berths. The docking procedure took 3 hours as their ship was scanned by security systems and inspected by automated probes. Jake had expected some delays, but the level of security seemed excessive for a diplomatic meeting. A delegation of 3 aliens met them at the airlock when they finally docked. The lead figure was a Vorthok whose compound eyes reflected the station lights like mirrors. His translator device spoke in perfect English with a slight mechanical accent. "Welcome to Centress Prime, Captain Morrison. I am Chancellor Thek of the Vorthok Confederation. The Council has been eager to meet with representatives of humanity." Jake shook the alien's offered hand carefully. The Vorthok's skin felt like hard leather, and his grip was surprisingly gentle for such a large creature. "Thank you for inviting us, Chancellor. We are honored to be here." The tour of the station took 4 hours as Chancellor Thek showed them the Council chambers, where representatives from 12 species made decisions that affected billions of lives across the galaxy. The chamber itself was a massive circular room with each species having their own specially designed seating. area that accommodated their unique biology, and the human delegation was given quarters in the diplomatic section of the station and told that the formal meeting would begin the next morning. Jake tried to sleep, but his mind kept racing with questions about what the council really wanted from Earth. The morning meeting began at exactly 800 hours local time. The council chamber was filled with representatives from all 12 member species, and Jake felt the weight of their attention as he entered the room with his team. Chancellor Thek stood at the center of the chamber, and his voice carried clearly through the translation systems. Representatives of Earth, we welcome you to the Galactic Council. For 3,000 years, this body has maintained peace and prosperity throughout this region of space. Your species has grown rapidly, and we believe the time has come to discuss your place in the galactic community. An Eldari representative, whose crystal body glowed with soft blue light, stepped forward. We have observed human expansion with great interest. Your technology develops quickly, and your people show remarkable adaptability. However, rapid growth without proper guidance can lead to unfortunate conflicts. Jake felt a chill run down his spine at the word unfortunate. Carol stepped forward to respond, but Chancellor Thek raised one of his 4 hands to stop her. We do not expect an immediate answer to our proposal, the Vorthak said. Please take time to review these documents and consider carefully what we are offering. Mechanical assistant rolled forward carrying a data pad that contained hundreds of pages of legal text written in multiple alien languages. Carol took the device, and her face grew pale as she scrolled through the first few sections. The civilization accords, as they were called, would require humanity to limit their expansion to current territories, submit all new technology to council review, and contribute 60% of their resources to the collective good of member species. Jake looked around the chamber at the alien faces watching him and realized that this was not really an invitation at all. It was an ultimatum wrapped in diplomatic language. The galaxy had finally noticed humanity, and they did not like what they saw. President Helen Garcia sat at the head of the Emergency Council table in the secure conference room beneath the White House. The room had been designed to withstand nuclear attacks, but today it felt like they were facing something far worse than any weapon Earth had ever known. Around the table sat the most powerful leaders on the planet, all waiting to hear what Captain Morrison had discovered at Centress Prime. Dr. Lisa Adams stood at the front of the room with a holographic display showing images from their visit to the council station. Her hand shook slightly as she pointed to the first image, showing the massive alien structure that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. The technology we observed was impressive, but something felt wrong about it, Lisa said. The council species have had faster than light travel for thousands of years, yet their ships looked old, and their systems seemed outdated compared to what we might expect from such an advanced civilization. General Kevin Murphy leaned forward in his chair. His weathered face showed the concern that every military leader felt when facing an unknown enemy. What exactly are you suggesting, Dr. Adams? Lisa touched a control, and the display changed to show readings from the hidden sensors she had placed throughout the council station. These readings show energy signatures that do not match the technology they displayed publicly. They have power sources that could run entire star systems, yet they claim their resources are limited. Ambassador Carol Wright opened the thick folder containing the Civilization Accords and spread the documents across the table. The terms they are offering make more sense now. They want to control our expansion, limit our technology development, and take most of our resources. This is not a partnership agreement, it is a surrender document. President Garcia studied the alien text with its formal language and polite phrases that hid demands no free species could accept. How long do we have before they expect an answer? 30 days, Carol replied. But I got the impression they expect us to accept quickly. Chancellor Thek mentioned that species who take too long to decide often face unfortunate circumstances. Commander Ryan Blake had been quiet throughout the meeting, but now he activated his own holographic display. Ryan led Earth's most secret intelligence unit, and his people had been investigating alien activities for years without the Council's knowledge. We have been tracking unusual energy readings from 3 different star systems over the past 6 months, Ryan said. Each system showed the same pattern of massive power buildup, followed by complete communication blackout. When our long-range probes finally reached those systems, we found something disturbing. The display showed images of dead worlds with cities reduced to glass and oceans turned to steam. The destruction was so complete that it looked like the planets had been hit by weapons that could crack moons in half. These worlds belonged to species that had recently refused council membership. Ryan continued. The official reports claimed they suffered natural disasters or internal wars, but our analysis shows the damage. Patterns are consistent with orbital bombardment, using weapons far more advanced than anything the council admits to possessing. Secretary of State Claire Johnson shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Are you saying the council destroys entire civilizations that refuse to join them? The evidence suggests exactly that, Ryan replied. But it gets worse. We managed to recover data fragments from one of the destroyed worlds, and our computers have been working around the clock to decode the alien language. Professor Nina Scott entered the room carrying a tablet filled with translation algorithms and linguistic analysis programs. Nina had spent her entire career studying dead alien languages, and her work had helped humanity understand dozens of extinct civilizations. The data fragments tell an incredible story, Nina said as she connected her tablet to the main display. These aliens had developed technology that was advancing rapidly toward levels that might have challenged the Council's authority. Their final transmissions indicate they had discovered something about the Council's true nature. The display showed partially decoded messages written in the alien script. Nina had managed to translate enough words to piece together fragments of the story. They discovered that the Council species were once far more advanced than they are now, Nina explained. Archaeological evidence from their world showed ruins of technology that surpassed anything the current Council possesses. It appears that joining the Council actually caused their technology to stagnate and decline over time. Dr. Adams felt her stomach turn cold as the implications became clear. The Council is not just controlling expansion and resources. They are actively preventing member species from advancing beyond a certain level. President Garcia stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the city above them. Millions of people went about their daily lives completely unaware that their entire species faced possible extinction. How long before the Council realizes we are investigating them? We may have already run out of time, Ryan said grimly. Our monitoring stations detected massive fleet movements throughout Council space starting 3 days ago. Ships are being repositioned near human colonies and trade routes. General Murphy activated his communication device and began issuing orders to military commanders across human space. All colonial defense forces are to go to highest alert status immediately. I want every ship and weapon system ready for possible attack. Ambassador Carol Wright looked through more sections of the Civilization Accords and found clauses that made her blood run cold. There are provisions in here for Council peacekeeping forces to be stationed in our territories, and Council oversight of all human government decisions. If we sign this document, we essentially become a protectorate with no real independence. Dr. Adams pulled up star charts showing human expansion over the past 50 years. We have 47 colonies spread across 16 star systems. Moving our entire population would be the largest evacuation in galactic history. Moving them where? President Garcia asked. If the Council controls this entire region of space, then there is nowhere to run. Nina Scott had been studying galactic maps and historical records for hours trying to find an answer to that exact question. There might be one option. Human faster-than-light technology is actually more advanced than what the Council species use. Our ships can travel farther and faster than anything they have shown us. She highlighted a region of space beyond the galactic rim where no Council species had ever traveled. Long-range surveys show habitable systems beyond the edge of known space. The Council has never explored that region because their technology cannot reach it safely. Commander Blake understood immediately what Nina was suggesting. You want us to abandon everything we have built and flee to uncharted space? It might be our only chance for survival as a free species, Nina replied. The Council has spent thousands of years creating a system designed to prevent any species from becoming too powerful or independent. Every civilization that has tried to resist them has been destroyed. President Garcia turned back to face the room full of advisors and leaders. We need to make a decision that will affect every human being alive today, and every human who will ever be born. Do we submit to alien control and accept that our children will never know true freedom? Or do we risk everything on the chance that we can find a new home among unknown stars? The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the impossible choice before them. Outside the window, the sun was setting over a world that might soon be abandoned forever. President Helen Garcia had not slept in 3 days. The emergency sessions continued around the clock as humanity's leaders struggled with the most important decision in their species' history. The secure conference room had become a second home for the small group of people who would decide the fate of 47 human colonies spread across 16 star systems. General Kevin Murphy stood before a massive holographic display showing the positions of Council fleets throughout known space. Red markers indicated enemy ships, while blue dots showed human colonies and defensive positions. The tactical situation looked hopeless, with Council forces outnumbering human ships by more than 10 to 1. "Our military analysis is complete," Kevin said. "If we choose to fight the Council, we might be able to hold 3 or 4 systems for a few months. But we cannot win a prolonged war against 12 different alien species. Their combined industrial capacity is simply too large for us to overcome." Secretary of State Claire Johnson had spent days on secure communications with leaders from every human colony, trying to gauge support for different options. The colonial governors are divided. About half want to negotiate better terms with the Council, while the other half support complete withdrawal from known space. Dr. Lisa Adams had been working with teams of scientists to understand exactly what humanity would be giving up if they accepted Council membership. The Civilization Accords would effectively end human scientific advancement. All research must be approved by Council committees, and any discoveries that might challenge their authority would be classified as dangerous to galactic stability. Ambassador Carol Wright had studied every word of the alien treaty, looking for loopholes or alternatives that might preserve some human independence. "I have found 17 different clauses that would allow the Council to intervene in human affairs whenever they consider it necessary. We would have no real government of our own." Professor Nina Scott entered the room carrying data tablets filled with new information about the mysterious region beyond the galactic rim. "Our deep space surveys have identified 12 potentially habitable systems within range of our fastest ships. The journey would take 18 months using our most advanced faster-than-light drives." Commander Ryan Blake had been monitoring Council communications using hidden listening posts throughout human space. "The intercepted messages are becoming more urgent. The Council expects our answer within 2 weeks, and they are discussing something called Protocol 7 if we refuse their terms." President Garcia looked around the table at the exhausted faces of her advisors. "What is Protocol 7? Ryan activated his holographic display showing decoded fragments of Council military communications. "We have only partial translations, but it appears to be a contingency plan for dealing with aggressive species that threaten galactic stability. The communications mention orbital bombardment and complete sterilization of all inhabited worlds." The room fell silent as everyone understood what that meant. The Council was prepared to commit genocide against the entire human species rather than allow them to remain independent. Dr. Lisa Adams pulled up star charts showing human expansion over the past 50 years. "If we choose to evacuate, we would need to move approximately 200 million people, along with all the equipment and resources necessary to establish new colonies in uncharted space." "How long would such an evacuation take?" President Garcia asked. "At least 6 months using every transport ship we can build or commandeer," Lisa replied. "We would need to coordinate the simultaneous evacuation of 47 different worlds, while maintaining operational security to prevent the Council from discovering our plans." General Murphy studied the logistics of such a massive operation. "The Council would notice if we started building large numbers of transport ships or moving military assets into evacuation positions. We might have to begin the withdrawal before we are fully prepared." Claire Johnson had been thinking about the diplomatic implications of abandoning known space entirely. "If we leave without explanation, the Council might interpret it as an act of war and pursue us into uncharted territory. We need to send a message that makes our intentions clear." Carol Wright had drafted several versions of such a message, trying to find the right balance between firmness and diplomacy. "We could announce that humanity chooses to explore new regions of space, rather than accept limitations on our development. Frame it as a peaceful withdrawal rather than a rejection of Council authority." Commander Blake shook his head. "The Council is not going to accept any explanation that allows us to remain independent." They have spent thousands of years building a system where no species can challenge their control. Letting humanity escape would set a dangerous precedent. Professor Nina Scott had been studying the historical records of other species that had attempted to resist council control. Every civilization that tried to negotiate or find compromise solutions was eventually destroyed. The council does not accept partial compliance or limited membership. Species either submit completely or they are eliminated. President Garcia walked to the window and looked out at the city above them. Somewhere in those buildings, families were having dinner and children were playing games completely unaware that their world might be abandoned within months. Are we really considering giving up everything our species has built over the past century? Dr. Adams joined her at the window. The alternative is giving up everything our species might become over the next 1,000 years. The council system is designed to prevent advancement and maintain their control forever. If we submit now, our descendants will never have the chance to explore new technologies or reach their full potential. The debate continued for hours as each advisor presented their analysis and recommendations. Military experts calculated the resources needed for evacuation. Scientists estimated the challenges of establishing colonies in unknown systems. Diplomats drafted messages that would explain humanity's decision to the galaxy. General Murphy finally stood up and activated a secure communication link to military commanders throughout human space. All colonial defense forces are to begin immediate preparations for Operation Exodus. Evacuation protocols are now in effect. President Garcia felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders as she realized the decision had been made. We are really going to abandon 47 worlds and flee to unknown space rather than submit to alien control. We are choosing freedom over security, Claire Johnson said. Our children will grow up among distant stars, but they will grow up free. Carol Wright began drafting the message that would be broadcast to every world in the galaxy. Humanity withdraws from all territories within council jurisdiction effective immediately. We will not submit to external authority over our development or expansion. The galaxy belongs to those who accept limitations. We choose to explore what lies beyond. Commander Blake was already implementing security protocols to ensure the council could not track their evacuation routes. Every navigation beacon and communication relay in human space will be destroyed during the withdrawal. We cannot leave any trail for them to follow. Professor Nina Scott pulled up images of the distant star systems that would become humanity's new home. These worlds are completely unexplored. We have no idea what we will find when we arrive. President Garcia looked around the room one final time at the small group of people who had chosen exile over submission. Then we will face the unknown together as a free species, rather than live as slaves in familiar space. The decision was made, and there could be no turning back. Humanity would abandon the table rather than accept the chains offered by their alien hosts. Admiral Peter Kane stood on the observation deck of the UES Liberation, watching the largest evacuation fleet in galactic history assemble in orbit around Earth. Hundreds of transport ships filled the space between Earth and its moon while construction yards worked around the clock to build more vessels for the exodus that would carry humanity to unknown stars. The first phase of Operation Exodus had begun 6 weeks ago when President Garcia announced humanity's withdrawal from council space to a stunned galaxy. The alien response had been swift and predictable, with council fleets moving to blockade positions around human colonies while diplomatic channels filled with demands for immediate compliance. Captain Jake Morrison piloted his scout ship through the asteroid belt beyond Mars, where teams of engineers were dismantling the orbital factories that had supplied human expansion for decades. Every piece of useful technology was being loaded onto transport ships, while anything too large to move was being destroyed to prevent it from falling into alien hands. Dr. Lisa Adams supervised the evacuation of the research station on Europa, where humanity's most advanced scientific projects were being carefully packed for transport to their new home beyond the galactic rim. The quantum computers that had revolutionized human technology were too valuable to leave behind, but too fragile to survive rough handling during the journey. The biological samples from 43 different worlds are secured in cryo-storage. Lisa reported to Admiral Kane over the communication system. We are preserving genetic material from every species humanity has encountered in case we need to recreate Earth ecosystems on our new worlds. Commander Ryan Blake coordinated the most dangerous part of the evacuation from his command ship in the outer colonies. Teams of Special Forces soldiers were systematically destroying navigation beacons and communication relays throughout human space, making it impossible for anyone to follow their evacuation routes. Each destroyed beacon erased another path that led back to Earth and humanity's future home. The Council had initially dismissed the evacuation as an elaborate bluff designed to force better negotiations. Chancellor Thek sent multiple messages demanding that humanity cease their withdrawal and return to the bargaining table. When those messages were ignored, the tone became more threatening with mentions of peacekeeping forces and enforcement actions. Professor Nina Scott worked from the navigation center aboard the flagship, coordinating jump calculations for the massive fleet that would carry 200 million people across unexplored space. The journey to their new home would require precision, timing, and perfect coordination since their destination lay beyond the range of conventional, faster-than-light communication. The first wave of colony ships will depart in 72 hours, Nina announced. Advanced scout teams are already establishing supply depots along the route to ensure the main fleet has enough resources for the 18-month journey. Ambassador Carol Wright monitored alien communication channels from the diplomatic ship that served as humanity's last embassy to the galaxy. The Council species were becoming increasingly agitated as they realized the scope of humanity's withdrawal. Several alien governments had requested emergency sessions to discuss the unprecedented situation. The Vorthak are mobilizing their entire fleet, Carol reported. Intelligence suggests they are planning to intercept our evacuation ships before they can reach the Galactic Rim. General Kevin Murphy had anticipated such a response and positioned human military forces to protect the evacuation routes. Fast attack ships patrolled the borders of human space while heavy cruisers escorted the vulnerable transport vessels carrying civilians and equipment toward their distant destination. The galaxy watched in growing amazement as humanity systematically emptied their colonies without leaving anything useful behind. Cities that had taken decades to build were abandoned in weeks, while orbital installations were dismantled and loaded onto transport ships. Even the terraforming projects that had transformed barren worlds into garden planets were being reversed to erase all traces of human presence. Captain Morrison led the evacuation of New Boston, the first human colony established outside the solar system 50 years ago. The planet's 3 million inhabitants boarded transport ships with only personal belongings while automated systems began dismantling the infrastructure they were leaving behind. The fusion reactors are being removed and the atmospheric processors are being shut down, Morrison reported. In 6 months, this world will return to its original state as if humans had never been here. Dr. Adams oversaw the destruction of the research facilities on Kepler Station, where humanity had made their greatest scientific breakthroughs. The laboratories were stripped of all equipment while computer systems were wiped clean of any data that might help the Council understand human technology. Every piece of research that could advance alien science is being destroyed, Lisa confirmed. We are not giving them any tools that could help them maintain their control over other species. The Council's patience finally ran out when the evacuation entered its 3rd month. Alien fleets began moving toward human space with orders to stop the withdrawal and force compliance with Council authority. The largest alien armada in centuries assembled at the edge of human territory while diplomatic messages demanded immediate surrender. Commander Blake intercepted the alien communications and decoded their battle plans. Council forces are preparing to attack our evacuation fleet in the Centauri system. They plan to capture our transport ships and force our population to return to their assigned worlds. Admiral Kane positioned his military forces between the alien fleets and the civilian evacuation ships. Human warships were vastly outnumbered, but their advanced technology and desperate determination might buy enough time for the transports to escape into hyperspace. All civilian ships are to proceed immediately to jump coordinates, Kane ordered. Military escorts will delay pursuing forces for as long as possible. The first battle between human and Council forces began in the outer reaches of the Alpha Centauri system, as alien ships attempted to intercept fleeing transport vessels. Human fighters engaged the enemy, scouts while destroyers and cruisers targeted the larger alien warships with weapons that had never been tested in real combat. President Garcia broadcast the final message from Earth. as the last evacuation ships prepared to depart from humanity's homeworld. Her words were transmitted across the galaxy on every frequency that alien species used for communication. The galaxy offered humanity membership in a system built on control and limitation. We offered partnership and cooperation, but you demanded submission and obedience. Today, humanity chooses freedom over security and exploration over stagnation. We leave behind the worlds we built to seek new homes among stars you fear to explore. The galaxy belongs to those who accept chains. We go to find our destiny among the infinite possibilities of unknown space. The message ended as Earth's communication arrays went dark, and the last human ships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying their species toward an uncertain future beyond the galactic rim. Behind them, they left empty worlds and destroyed infrastructure, while ahead lay the promise of freedom among distant stars. The galaxy had watched in terror as humanity abandoned the table and chose exile over submission to alien authority. 5 years had passed since humanity disappeared beyond the galactic rim, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Terra Station, watching construction ships build the latest addition to humanity's growing fleet of exploration vessels. The humans had not just survived their exile, they had thrived, in ways that surprised even their own leaders. Dr. Lisa Adams worked in laboratories that would have seemed like magic to the scientists she had left behind in Council space. Human technology had advanced more in 5 years of freedom than it had in the previous 50 years under the shadow of alien oversight. The quantum computers that processed their research data could solve problems that had once taken months in mere minutes. The breakthrough in dimensional physics opens possibilities we never imagined. Lisa reported to the Council of Human Leaders who governed their new civilization. We can now detect energy patterns across vast distances, and our sensors are picking up some very interesting activity back in Council space. President Helen Garcia had been re-elected twice since the Exodus, and her leadership during humanity's greatest crisis had made her one of the most respected figures in human history. She listened to the reports from their new worlds with a mixture of pride and concern, as their scouts brought news from the galaxy they had abandoned. "What kind of activity are we detecting?" Helen asked. Commander Ryan Blake had spent the past 5 years establishing an intelligence network that stretched across known space, using automated probes and hidden listening posts. 3 more species have attempted to follow our example and withdraw from Council control. All 3 were destroyed within months of announcing their independence. The news did not surprise anyone in the room. The Council had made it clear that humanity's escape could not be allowed to inspire other species to seek freedom. The brutal suppression of any independence movement served as a warning to other civilizations that might question Council authority. Professor Nina Scott had continued her research into ancient galactic history using artifacts and data recovered from the abandoned human colonies. The pattern is becoming clearer. Every few thousand years, a species emerges that threatens Council control, and they are systematically eliminated. We found evidence of at least 12 major civilizations that were destroyed over the past 50,000 years. Captain Morrison had led dozens of exploration missions to distant star systems, where humanity was establishing new colonies far from any possible Council interference. Our scouts have mapped over 200 systems beyond the galactic rim and found suitable worlds for expansion. We could support a population of several billion people in this region. The human colonies in exile had become something remarkable. Without Council restrictions on technology development or limits on expansion, humanity had unleashed their full potential for the first time in their history. Cities built with advanced materials and powered by fusion reactors that operated at impossible efficiency levels stretched across the surfaces of a dozen different worlds. Ambassador Carol Wright maintained communication links with the few alien species that had remained neutral during humanity's departure. The reports from our contacts suggest that Council authority is becoming more oppressive. They have imposed new restrictions on member species and increased their military presence throughout known space. The Council had learned nothing from humanity's escape except that tighter control was needed to prevent future defections. The freedoms that member species had once enjoyed were steadily reduced while Council oversight of local governments became more direct and intrusive. Dr. Adams suddenly looked up from her instruments with an expression of shock and amazement. The long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures moving toward the galactic core from regions beyond our current exploration range. These readings are unlike anything we have seen before. The display screens around the room lit up with data streams showing energy patterns that dwarfed anything produced by known galactic civilizations. Whatever was generating those signals possessed technology that made even humanity's advanced systems look primitive by comparison. Commander Blake activated the emergency communication system and began recalling all human scouts and exploration vessels to defensive positions. If something that powerful is moving toward the galaxy, we need to be ready for anything. The answer came 3 days later, when automated monitoring stations throughout Council space began broadcasting emergency alerts. Long-range sensors detected enormous ships of unknown design, emerging from the void between galaxies and moving toward the outer regions of known space with purpose and determination. Professor Nina Scott worked frantically to decode the energy, signatures, and design patterns of the approaching vessels. The ship configurations match architectural styles found in some of the ancient ruins we discovered. I think these might be the original builders of the civilizations that the Council destroyed. President Garcia convened an emergency session as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Are we looking at an invasion force? Something much worse, Nina replied. According to the ancient records, these are called the Keepers, and they were the original rulers of this galaxy before the Council system was established. The text suggests that the Council was created not as a governing body, but as a prison system designed to keep the Keepers dormant. The implications hit everyone in the room at the same time. The Galactic Council had never been the supreme authority they pretended to be. They were guards maintaining a quarantine system that prevented the awakening of forces they could not hope to control. Captain Morrison pulled up tactical displays showing the positions of the approaching Keeper fleets. The ancient ships are moving directly toward the galactic core, where the Council maintains their primary military installations. This looks like they are planning to reclaim their former territory. The galaxy erupted into chaos as the Keeper fleets made contact with Council forces in the outer regions of known space. The battles that followed lasted only minutes before entire Council armadas were destroyed by weapons that operated on principles no current species understood. The aliens who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years were swept aside like insects facing a hurricane. Emergency communications from the Council reached human space within hours as alien leaders begged for assistance against the returning Keepers. Chancellor Thek himself appeared on the transmission screens, pleading for humanity to return and help restore the order that their departure had apparently disrupted. The quarantine has failed because your species refused to accept their proper place in the galactic order, the Vorthak leader transmitted. Your exodus triggered ancient monitoring systems that alerted the Keepers to our failure. You must return and help us restore stability before they destroy everything we have built. President Garcia looked around the room at her advisors and leaders as they considered the desperate plea from the aliens who had once threatened to destroy humanity for refusing to submit to their authority. They offer us partnership as equals now that they face extinction, Helen said. They demand our help to save the system they use to control us. Dr. Adams shook her head as she watched reports of Keeper fleets dismantling Council installations throughout the galaxy. We offered them cooperation and they demanded our submission. We offered them freedom and they chose chains. They made their choice and now they must live with the consequences. Commander Blake began shutting down the communication channels that connected human space to the galaxy they had abandoned. The Keepers are not our problem. We chose exile to escape Council control, and we will not return to save our former oppressors from their own mistakes. President Garcia authorized the final message that would be transmitted to the galaxy before humanity severed all contact with their former home. You watched in terror as we abandoned your table rather than accept your chains. We offered you partnership and you demanded our submission. We offered you freedom and you chose control. Now you face masters far less forgiving than we would have been. The galaxy belongs to those who accept limitations. We have found our destiny among the infinite stars. The transmission ended as human ships turned away from the galactic rim and headed toward even more distant regions of space, where new worlds waited to be explored and colonized. Behind them, the galaxy burned as ancient powers reclaimed their lost domain, while the species who had once ruled in their name faced judgment for the control system they had maintained. Humanity had chosen freedom over security and exile over submission, and their choice had proven to be the wisest decision in their species' history.